Hello there, or shall I say, hello there. This may be surprising for some of you, but I'm a pretty big Batman fan. I was never a huge superhero fan growing up, that is, until I played the game we're talking about today, which I forgot to bring in here. Batman Arkham Asylum, which is often regarded as one of the best, if not the best, superhero game of all time, as well as one of the greatest interpretations of Batman as a character alongside the animated series. Okay, I might have made that second part up, but it seems right to me. This month, though, it will have been 13 years since this game released originally. So I wanted to take a bit of a gander and see if this thing still holds up in 2022. Also, I played the Return to Arkham re-release, which as far as I can tell is essentially the same thing with some standard graphical updates. I just wanted to mention that in case somebody was wondering. No headphones today, by the way. I don't know what happened there. Alright, let's take a look and get into it. Batman Arkham Asylum was released in 2009 for the Xbox 360, PS3, and Microsoft Windows, and it was developed by Rocksteady Studios and published by Eidos Interactive. Visually, I'm always impressed by how well this game walks the line between realism and more comic book-inspired designs. Environments have a very gritty, realistic design, while the characters are much more stylized, which could easily be too abrasive, but was actually done quite seamlessly here. I've always loved the design of the asylum itself, with these very antiquated exteriors that almost evoke a gothic tone, and interiors that are surprisingly varied, with some sections feeling more clinical and others, like the Arkham Mansion, upholding the more classic feel of the outdoor segments. I'll probably get into this a little more when we talk about gameplay, but the asylum has a lot of cool dynamic elements to it as well. Like at one point you see some of Joker's henchmen building something outside of the visitor center that gets more and more complete as you progress through the game, and it eventually turns into a giant Joker face. He must have a lot of guys working on that shit too, because I swear I took those guys down every single time I walked by. It's a very atmospheric world design, with each portion of Arkham Island that you visit feeling completely unique and original. Atmosphere is something that I'll wait until later to talk about as well, as it's actually more closely related to the gameplay than the presentation a lot of the time. I've heard people criticize some of the character designs in this game, and I can understand that, but I'm a big fan of pretty much all of them. Though much of the design was inspired by comic books, personally I see a lot of influence from the animated series as well on some of the characters. Notably, Batman himself, who to me looks like a hybrid of the animated series version and Jim Lee's version from comics like Hush, who I saw cited as an influence on Wikipedia. Personally, I like this Batsuit because it looks tough without being too armored out to the point where it looks like he wouldn't be able to move. The Joker more closely resembles the Killing Joke version, which I think was a great choice and translated nicely into the game. Giving Harley Quinn a design that's completely different from anything seen before was a bold choice, but I think it turned out really cool. She has this kinda crazy nurse thing going on that fits really well with the Arkham Asylum setting. Speaking of those three characters, Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, and Arlene Sorkin all reprise their roles from the animated series as Batman, Joker, and Harley. This really adds a lot to the game. Not just because those voices are recognizable, but because they all gave fantastic performances as well. And as far as I know, this was the last time that Arlene Sorkin ever did Harley's voice, so that makes it a little extra cool. Arkham Asylum's story was written by none other than Paul Dini, who some may be familiar with as one of the principal writers on Batman the Animated Series, and more recently the awesome Batman the Adventures Continue comic book series. Oh yeah, and he also literally created Harley Quinn. So yeah, that was pretty neat. The point is though, he's a fantastic, extremely accomplished writer, and this game is no exception. I actually saw an interview recently with Kevin Conroy where he talked about what a perfect concept this was for a game. Since Batman never kills anyone, Arkham Asylum is where the majority of his villains end up. So having him essentially trapped on an island with a bunch of his greatest foes works out pretty well from a gameplay perspective. The plot, surprisingly enough, follows Batman just as he's taking the Joker back to Arkham for probably like the 100th time. However, he quickly realizes that Joker actually intended to get captured, as a recent fire at Blackgate Prison led his whole crew to be moved to the asylum. How convenient. The Joker, of course, breaks free, and pretty much all hell breaks loose real fast. The Warden and Commissioner Gordon, that rhymes, are both captured, and the guards and staff struggle to defend themselves against the escaped convicts and supercriminals. So naturally, Batman kind of has to step in to try and put a stop to all of that nonsense. which is where we come in. It's honestly a fairly simple story, with the main curveball being that Joker intends to create an army of superhumans like Bane, with a brand new chemical called Titan, but what I really like about it is how all of the other villains are tied into it, which is something that I think Dini has always been good at. For instance, Poison Ivy is the only one who knows how to make an antidote for the Titan formula, but the flower that you need to create it can only be found in Killer Croc's lair. Though honestly, Ivy probably just said that to troll Batman so he had to go down there. But anyways, then it turns out that Scarecrow is also in Killer Croc's lair because he wants to poison Gotham's water supply. There's a lot of cool stuff like that in this game. All of the individual characters are also written really well. One of my favorite things ever is this one part where Batman is saving a bunch of people from falling into Joker gas. He gets to this one guy who turns out to be one of Joker's thugs, but he of course saves him anyways. And then the guy just looks at him for a second, like, wow, I wasn't expecting him to save me. Right before Batman fucking decks him right in the face. Seriously though, the little awkward look they give each other followed by the punch makes me laugh every single time. And isn't that honestly like the most Batman thing ever? Seriously though, this version of Batman is fantastic. It reminds me more of something like Jeff Loeb's Batman, actually, in that he kind of retains some of the ruthlessness of Frank Miller's version, but he'll also always talk to the people he rescues to make sure they're okay. The Joker is also written really well, like in this one part where he claims that he'll kill these 2 hostages if you don't free them in time, but then it turns out he's just joking and you actually have as much time as you want. The gameplay in Arkham Asylum is interesting because even if you haven't played it, you've probably pretty much played it. That's because after this came out, every developer and their mom started using the same combat system. Also, don't get mad at me because I have heard a few places that Prince of Persia did something similar first, but I've never played it so it's hard for me to say for sure. What I can say for sure though is that a lot of games have used this combat system since the release of Arkham Asylum. I now realize that I haven't actually explained what that system is yet though, so I will do that now. Essentially, Arkham Asylum's combat is based around building up combos with something that has more recently been termed free flow combat. After you get a combo of 3 or more, every enemy you hit will fall to the ground after 1 strike, and you'll be able to quickly dash between enemies simply by pressing the attack button and pointing towards them with the left stick. Countering enemies is also very important. Unless you're playing on hard mode, an enemy will have a blue symbol above their head when they're about to attack you, and all you have to do is press Y before they hit you to stop them. The result of this system is that you pretty much feel like a complete badass, which is exactly how you should feel as Batman. Just being able to fly around the screen knocking dudes around like a madman was really groundbreaking when this came out, and it's still really fun to play. Of course, you have a few other options in combat besides just hitting and countering. Garnering a combo of 8 or 5 after an upgrade will allow you to use either a special combo takedown where you can instantly knock out an enemy, or you can just straight up throw a dude like a sack of potatoes. I really wish they didn't remove that one from the future installments because it's badass. Though the throw move won't always instantly take out an enemy like the takedown, it can often be used to knock down multiple enemies at once. Or you can just throw the guy off a railing or into an electric fence in some situations to take them out. Also, the little animations that play when you use a special combo takedown are super brutal and awesome. Usually he'll just break the guy's arm or leg, or just fucking slam them on the ground, like I used to do with my Scooby-Doo inflatable punching bag, until the water started leaking out of the bottom. You also have the option to instantly take down an enemy that you've knocked to the ground by pressing RT and Y. But you have to choose the right times to use this, as it locks you into an animation during which you can still get hit by other enemies without an option to counter them, which I thought was a good idea so you can't overuse it. Additionally, you can use batarangs and the bat claw during combos to knock guys over or pull guys towards you, which is a good concept and a good option to have, but they did a lot more with this idea in the sequels. Later on, enemies with knives are introduced who will block all of your attacks if you don't stun them first with your cape. This is a good addition because it keeps you from just mashing the attack button over and over and maybe countering occasionally during combat. Similarly, thugs with electric batons are introduced as well. You can't attack these guys from the front or you'll get shocked, so you have to dodge behind them to attack. Having these different enemy types is certainly nice, but once again, I think the sequels did a much better job with this. For a first installment though, the variety is still impressive. Generally, the combat just feels really great, even compared to the newer Arkham games, and actually manages to make you feel like Batman. All of your attacks have a lot of weight to them, and the sound effects are awesome. There's a reason why a million games adopted this combat system afterwards. If you're familiar with my channel at all, you might know that I'm a big fan of varied gameplay, and damn, this game has that going for it. We just talked about the combat, but you'll be doing a whole lot more than that here, which I think is one of the main reasons why I love this game so much. Throughout the game, you'll come across groups of thugs with guns, who you have to use stealth to take out, as you can't really face them head on. Luckily, the stealth in this game is excellently designed, and once again, really makes you feel like Batman. Detective mode is helpful in these situations, which allows you to see enemy positions through walls, and is just generally helpful by highlighting other things that are useful to you. As far as options in stealth, these gargoyles are pretty much your best friend. Every stealth section that I can remember has these helpful guys coincidentally littered about, which allow you to survey your enemies unseen until you can swoop down and take them out. Though the general stealth takedown where you just sneak up behind guys and knock them out is completely viable, you can dispatch your enemies in other ways as well. There's an inverted takedown where you hang a dude upside down from a gargoyle, which is really sweet but will often attract the attention of other enemies since the guy will start screaming, understandably. My personal favorite though is the explosive gel, which allows you to leave traps for your enemies on certain explosive surfaces and blow them up remotely. And yeah, those giant wood splinters are totally non-lethal and won't leave any lasting injuries. Don't worry about it. It's also worth mentioning that the areas in which the stealth sections occur are all beautifully designed and easy to maneuver in. Like, all of these stealth maps are pretty much ingrained in my head from when I was a kid, which is a good thing, and something that I can't really say for the other installments in the series. As you take more guys out in stealth segments, enemy behavior will change. For example, certain guys will keep looking around corners and always thinking there's something behind them, and their voice lines will also change to match this new behavior, which does a great job of making you feel cool and also showing how scary Batman really is. I even noticed something that I had no idea existed in this game prior to this playthrough, when this boiler made a loud sound and all of the enemies in the room started freaking the f*** out and shooting at it. Which is attention to detail that I really appreciate. Once again, stealth is something that was expanded upon in future installments, but it's already really great here. Also, it's not often that a game nails both standard combat and stealth. Usually it's kind of a trade-off sort of deal. But that's just a testament to how badass this game is. Of course, you can't have Batman without a variety of bat gadgets, which this game certainly offers. You of course have your standard Batarang, which can be used for more obvious combat purposes as well as for solving a few puzzles by cutting ropes and such. You have your explosive gel, which I mentioned before as my favorite stealth takedown, but that can also be used to open previously inaccessible areas to explore. There's the Bat Claw, which is also mainly used to unlock new areas, but serves a purpose in combat as well. The Line Launcher, which you can use to zip between two horizontal points. And the Cryptographic Sequencer, which you can use to hack certain panels that you'll find throughout the game, usually to open a door or something like that. You also have a few upgrades for your Batarangs in the form of a remote control Batarang, which does pretty much exactly what it sounds like, and the Sonic Batarang, which lures enemies into traps during stealth. I don't think I actually used either of those during this playthrough though, because they're not really necessary in this game. I think they did a better job with those in the sequels once again. Compared to later entries in the series, it's a fairly modest array of gadgets, but it's also very effective. And the fact that most of the gadgets have practical and combat applications is also pretty dang cool. According to Wikipedia, the game's director, Sefton Hill, was inspired by the Legend of Zelda series and Metroid games in terms of gadget implementation, and I can certainly see that. It's definitely simplified compared to those games, but that makes sense considering puzzle solving isn't necessarily the main focus of Arkham Asylum. Exploration is another important element of the game. Though the game is linear for the most part, Arkham Island acts as kind of a semi-open world similar to something like Bioshock, which is also cited as an influence on Wikipedia. Essentially, you will always have main objectives that you must accomplish in a specific order, but you can pretty much go anywhere you want at any given time unless a certain area is blocked off. That said, there isn't much incentive to explore unless you want to collect all of these damn Riddler trophies. So Riddler's inclusion here is tamer than it is in any of the other games, but collecting trophies is always going to be kind of lame to me. There is the added incentive that collecting certain trophies will reward you with concept art and stuff like that, but that doesn't make it that much less lame, honestly. I kind of like the idea of having a different riddle to solve in each location as an optional mission, especially since the areas in Asylum are more conducive to doing so compared to the other games in the series. But the trophy part is still pretty much dumb. Otherwise though, I'm a big fan of the semi-open world in this game, which, as I mentioned earlier, also has a dynamic element to it. After you pass certain events in the story, things will begin to change, not just visually, but from a gameplay perspective as well. For example, after your enemies gain access to the armory, certain watchtowers will be occupied by enemy snipers. And after Harley Quinn lets out all of these crazy lunatic guys, they'll be pretty much all over the island. Details like this keep the game from feeling stale if you have to go through the same areas multiple times. Speaking of which, traversing the island is fairly easy with the inclusion of the grappling hook and the glide functionality of your cape. Both of these elements were clearly in an infantile state here, as they were greatly revamped for future installments in the series, but it's nice to have these abilities either way. I suppose now I pretty much have to talk about the king of childhood trauma himself, the Scarecrow. If there's one thing that you can take away from this game, or this review, it's that Scarecrow's inclusion here was f***ing perfectly executed. All of the 3 or so occasions in which Batman is exposed to Scarecrow's gas in the game are fantastic, with each doing a great job of highlighting Batman's biggest fears. Fear of failure, fear of loss, and even the fear that maybe he has been the bad guy all along, or maybe he's the crazy one. In Batman's first hallucination alone, he's led to believe that he's let Commissioner Gordon die, and then enters the morgue, in which he uncovers the bodies of his zombified parents, who scold him for not trying to save them. Damn. The second hallucination is even more batshit insane. As you walk down this random corridor in the Arkham Mansion, it slowly begins to morph into a seemingly endless crime alley. All the while, you can literally hear the events that transpired the night Batman's parents were killed. But that's nothing compared to the final hallucination sequence.
Did anyone catch the game last night?
Yeah, the game literally tries to make you think that your console just crashed, and it definitely got me the first time I played this. I probably shit my pants, honestly. Not only that, but when the fake game crash is over, it appears as though the game has just restarted from the beginning. Except the roles are reversed and Joker is bringing Batman to the asylum. The intro continues in a similar fashion, except now Batman is the patient and Joker just fucking shoots you in the face. It's shit like this that makes me feel like this is my favorite game in the series. Most of the others just don't have crazy stuff like this, at least not to the same extent. And yeah, the platforming/hiding segments that follow are a little bit anticlimactic, but they are at least suspenseful as you try to avoid Scarecrow's gaze. And using the bat signal to take Scarecrow down each time is hella symbolic. So we've talked about Batman's greatest fears, now let's talk about mine. Killer f***ing Croc. Waylon Jones, whatever the hell you want to call him, his section in this game is legitimately horrifying. Like, you thought Outlast was a little scary? No, f*** that. This shit traumatized me as a kid, I swear. So, as I mentioned a while ago, Ivy trolls Batman into entering Killer Croc's lair to get a flower or some dumb shit like that, but she neglected to mention that Croc's lair is literally just a maze of wooden platforms where Croc can pop out of the water whenever the hell he feels like. Not only that, but if you try to run, you instantly get eaten. So you have to slowly walk through this big ass maze, listening to this big motherfucker whispering at you before jumping out of the water with this loud ass music that starts playing until you batarang his stupid collar and then repeat the process over and over again. Also, his design in this game is fucking horrifying on its own. When you add completely random jump scares and loud music into the mix, things just get ridiculous. It sounds like I hate this part, but I actually love it. This is the kind of shit that sticks with you for life. Like the Scarecrow stuff too. And I still remember how afraid I always was to get to this part as a kid. And honestly, I still am when I come back to it now. It's scary as shit, and none of the other games in the series have anything really comparable. The last thing I want to talk about is the boss battles, which aren't incredible, but they're decent enough. Bane is probably the best one, honestly. The only problem with it is that it's literally the exact same as every other time you fight a big enemy. You wait until they charge, battering their face, and then dodge out of the way so they hit the wall. Poison Ivy's fight is fine too, it's just kinda boring. Also, my footage of it corrupted like halfway through, so most of it just looks like this. Yeah. And I would also talk about Joker's final boss fight, but that's like right after the part where my footage corrupted. So that also looks like this. Which is okay because it's not that interesting anyways. He just turns himself into a big guy like Bane and has a mohawk for some reason, and you punch his face really hard. That's about it. I would say that's all I've got for Arkham Asylum, but honestly I feel like I barely scratched the surface with this review. It's just a really great game with a lot to it, especially for Batman fans like myself. But honestly, I didn't even mention stuff like the Visitors Center, where you can have optional encounters with the Joker in this eerie first-person perspective. Or the fact that this game has one of the most insane Easter eggs of all time, which I somehow was able to unlock on my second try. There's literally a whole secret room in the Warden's office if you place explosive gel in 3 specific areas on the wall. And the room basically includes the whole concept for the game's sequel, Arkham City. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm pretty sure that at some point they just had to give away the location of the Easter egg because nobody was able to find it. It's pretty sweet either way though. But yeah, if you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of this game, and yeah, I do feel like it deserves as much praise as it got at release 13 years later in 2022. And I'd definitely be down to review the other games in the series if anyone would like to see that. Just let me know in the comments. Also, I don't have access to the polls feature on YouTube yet because I guess my channel is too small or something. So I'm just going to ask this question here and probably in a pinned comment down below if you'd like to respond. So for the next review, would you rather see Rage or Bioshock? Let me know. Also, please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more stuff like it. We're currently at the dreaded 69 at the time of recording, a fate worse than death as far as I'm concerned. So if you want to just go ahead and, bump that up to 70, I'll appreciate you forever. Alright, usually here I would plug some of my voice acting stuff, so you can check it out, but this review has gone on a lot longer than I originally anticipated, so I'll just mention that I do have a playlist on my channel of all of the YouTube videos that I've done voice acting for that you can check out. I have a ton of Batman related stuff on there, and a ton on my channel if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you when I see ya. Bye.